Okay, so this is going to be Willis's video, and because I really couldn't come up with anything extremely clever in regards to having the background, uh, I have Yamper, who's the closest thing that I have to anything that looks like a terrier, and then these are actually equal exchange chocolates. Let me get a good picture of them. That's about as good as we're gonna get. There we go, that's better. Equal exchange fair trade chocolates that my church actually sells. This is actually 43% cacao, so it's pretty high cacao, I guess. These will just equal exchange fair trade chocolates. That just it means that the farmers and such that grow the chocolate, that grow the cacao, and the people that make this get a fair deal in regards to how much that they get back. So there's not like this huge upsell in it and everything. And my church sells these along with a bunch of other stuff. If I can find a link to where you can buy these chocolates, I will see if I can put that in the link below, in the description below. But those are the closest things I had to a terrier, and Coco for Kokomon for Willis has. So, in regards to that, we have Willis, who is one of the American Digidestins. And his Digimon are in the order that they digivolve. We have Gummymon, who's a little green one. Terriermon, it's one with the funny bunny ears. Gargamon, who is kind of a weird looking rabbit with a machine gun arm. And then Rapidmon, Destiny mode, Destiny armor. So golden armor. There is a regular version of Rapidmon, but that's in Digimon Tamers, and I'll be going over him at another time. Then he has Kokomon, who is the smaller pink version. Then Kokomon can digivolve into Lopmon, which we don't ever see in the movie. Then we have Edingomon, who is also sometimes referred to as a Windigomon. And that's what Lopmon digivolves into. This is also a Lopmon that has a huge amount of virus data inside of it, so that's also affecting, of course, how it digivolves. And then Endigomon, or Windigomon, can turn into Antilomon. This is the kind of virus version of it. There is also another version of Antilomon that is in Digimon Tamers. Again, that'll get gone over in Digimon Tamers. Then we have Antilomon turns into Cherubimon, evil mode, virus mode, vice mode, whichever one you want to refer to it as. Technically, all three of them are correct. And then when purified, turns into Cherubimon good, or virtuous mode, which is the white and pinkish version. And we only see these ones we technically only see Willis in the Digimon movie that they did. We get a slight flash of him in flashes of him in Digimon The Last Evolution, which I will be going over. So the history that we have for Willis, but technically Willis also ties into Diaboromon, and I will be going over that. So what we get for Willis's backstory is that in 1995, the egg hatched in Japan that would eventually turn into a red Greymon that Tai and Kari interact with. In America, a single digi-egg comes out of Willis's computer, and it hatches into Gummymon and Kokomon for Willis. And he bonded with the new friends and who helped him do all of his chores around the farm where him and his parents lived. It's implied that either his parents also have like a home in New York, or at least within the New York region, and then that they also have a summer home or something like that, or a summer farm or whatever in Colorado. Out of every place that is talked about in Digimon, the only place that I've ever actually been is Colorado. I've been to Colorado, I've been to the Rockies. The summer after I graduated from high school back in 2010, my dad took me there on a trip, and we had a lot of fun. We went to the Rockies. We went to Estes Park. If anyone ever goes to Estes Park, it's gorgeous. We went and hiked around a bunch of the trails there. We went to Denver, and there was like a botanical gardens in Denver that we went to, and it was beautiful. So that's about as close as I've ever been to any places that's referenced in Digimon, because I have not been to New York. I want to go to New York, but I have not been there. But so Willis has his family there. Willis and Terriermon and Kokomon, well, Gummymon at that time, become very, very close. And then by 2000, Willis, unknown to anyone, decides that it would be a great idea to have more Digimon friends and try to create a Digi-Egg on his own computer. But in the process, it was attacked by a virus. This is the egg that, of course, turns into Infamon and all the way up into Diaboromon. In regards to this, it is stated that Willis is extremely, extremely smart because him and Izzy had been talking even before this happens. And, like, it's stated that, like, Willis, Izzy says that Willis is so smart that he's already taking, states at, like, Colorado University or whatever the case is. And Ty, of course, gets very annoyed about this. But Izzy and Willis seem to be both extremely smart. We have no idea what Willis's crest would have ended up being because it's never stated or even talked about what his crest would be. But he probably would have done quite well with the crest of knowledge that Izzy had, but it doesn't mean that every single Digidestin has a crest or that every single Digidestin would be able to have a Digi-Armor egg. But what ends up happening is, of course, that Digi-Egg that he tried to make got, warped and attacked by the virus, and then that virus made the Digivolve all the way up to Diaboromon. This is, of course, when we get the, battle between Diaboromon and Omnimon. And Willis is there, and, like, his advice to Izzy is, like, I don't know, somehow this is my fault, just find a way to slow him down. And, this is, Izzy, of course, comes up with the idea of send all the emails to Infamon to slow him down. Works good. But he does help a little bit in the battle, but it doesn't really do too much in regards to that. The main outcome of that is that the virus somehow makes its way out of the computer and finds where Willis is in Colorado, and it attacks and infects Kokomon. And Willis states that for the next 4 years, whatever it was, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, he watched as this virus mutated Kokomon more and more and, like, pulled Kokomon away from him. And pulled Kokomon away from Terriermon, because Terriermon and Kokomon are brothers, stated to be brothers in this. They're twins, because they come from the same Digi-Egg. And we don't really see anything else of Willis. I mean, we only see any interact with Willis in regards to what we see in the Digimon movie, of course. But then we get to New York in 2002, would have been the time frame. Kari and TK are in New York visiting Mimi and everything. And they end up coming across Willis because there's, like, this surge in data. And then nothing's working the way that it's supposed to. And then they find Willis and Terriermon being attacked or engaged in battle against Wendigomon, and who keeps telling Willis to go back, and Willis loses the battle. But Kari and TK try to get Willis's attention so they can try to help him, but Willis just runs off. And Patamon follows them and, like, listens to the fact that Willis is going to be going to Colorado, so he tells Kari and TK, and then Kari and TK then tell Davis and Yoli and Cody that, okay, you have to go to Colorado. And this, of course, results in, how the frick are we going to get to Colorado? They do end up making their way to Colorado, making their way to the States, and then they make their way to Colorado somehow via reasons. And they end up coming across this truck, and this cargo truck, many semi truck and everything. We passed so many of these on our trip, and then, like, the next weekend we had to go to my great uncle's 90th birthday party, and we passed so many semis it wasn't even funny. That was a fun drive. Lots of semis, some of them going much too fast for the area we were in. But we interact with Willis a little bit more before then. We see that Willis and Terriermon are working on their way to get back to Colorado, because Wendigomon keeps saying, go back, and Willis is like, okay, so I have to go back to Colorado, back to where it all started. And at one point, we get this adorable picture of like it's really hot out, and like Willis ends up having like Terriermon jumps on Willis's head and like makes his ears expand to give Willis more shade. Which I don't think I ever found a picture for it, but it's adorable. And what ends up happening is, Willis and Terriermon end up inside this semi, and this is where they meet Davis and Yoli and Cody, and they're Digimon. And they kind of hit it off rather fairly well at the beginning. And what ends up happening is, I know that there's certain bits that kind of got cut out in the English version, unfortunately, but I kind of wish they hadn't cut out so much. That would have been nice. But yeah, that would have been nice if they didn't cut out a whole bunch of stuff from the English version. For the English version, because we get a little more interaction here and there with some of the Digidestin, which would have been nice to watch. But they interact with Willis, and he's like, "Oh, so you're a Digidestin too?" And like Terriermon's having fun with like Upamon and Demi-Vmon and Poromon. And the four Digidestined are talking, and he's like, "Well, how about I just get us a ride to my house?" And they order a bunch of pizzas, and it's just like, okay, so I guess we're gonna be getting a ride from the pizza truck, which I'm just like, no, that's not the way that it works. And they're making their way to Willis. Well, just as they're about to get on the truck, Willis and Davis get left behind, and Yoli and Cody are on the truck getting sent off. And what ends up happening is this is when Wendigomon attacks again. And, Wendigomon has kind of stopped the train that Kari and TK are on at this point and told them, don't interfere, just like Diaboromon had. Willis and Davis end up having to battle Wendigomon, and this is the first time that Terriermon digivolves. By technicality, you would have had to digivolve at some point to go from Gummymon to Terriermon, but this is the first time that Willis has seen him digivolve into his champion version, which is Gargomon. And Willis's answer is, he's got pants now. Yeah, he also has like a Gatling gun on his arm, so you can figure that one out. They battle against Wendigomon, and Davis digivolves Vmon into Flamedramon, and they battle against Wendigomon, and Wendigomon keeps repeating the cryptic message of go back, and so they end up needing a ride after the Wendigomon disappears, and Vmon digivolves into Raidramon, and then we see them like riding on Raidramon through the countryside, which I'm like, okay, I am not the biggest fan of like off-roading or anything like that, but I would do that. I would ride on the back of a Digimon through like the countryside. That would be great. At like full speed, that would be great. They meet up with Cody and Yoli, and finds that Kari and TK aren't there yet. This makes Davis sad, but they're at Willis's farm, and they get Willis gives them more of an explanation as to who Wendigomon is. And the kids question him, and then he ends up running off. And he reveals that he's the one that created Wendigomon, and then he's the one that ends up explaining to Davis that I'm the one that made that virus that turned into Diaboromon all those years ago that Ty and Izzy and the others had to fight. I'm the one that made that, and then it found us, and then it kept, and then it just tormented and worked Kokomon for the next, however many years. And I had to watch, and I could do nothing about it. And Davis just starts crying at this. And he's just like, that's the saddest story I've ever heard. And Willis is like, it's my story, not yours. Get over it. And I was like, okay, at least it shows that Davis can be in touch with his emotional side, with his emotions that are not jealousy and or pride. Jealousy when it comes to Kari and TK, and pride when it comes to anybody, him trying to prove that he's awesome. But I mean, like, Davis is a good guy. This is about Willis. Terriermon overhears the whole conversation, and he blames it on his big ears, of course. And he still offers to help. He's like, well, Kokomon is my brother, and it's my job to help you stop him. And they decide that they are going to go up against Kokomon. And they go to the lake that's on the property. we never get 100% station of it's whether or not this is 100% still on the property or if it's just really more on whatever random land is near them. But Wendigomon appears and then digivolves into Antilomon, who's kind of a giant Digibunny, which in the Digimon version of the Zodiac that they create, Antilomon is the rabbit. Yeah, but that's again gone over in Digimon Tamers. Digimon then, Antilomon then battles Gargamon and Flandermon and Halsamon and Digmon, and is pretty much just able to wipe them out and everything. If I remember correctly, Antilomon would be a Mega, I think. I can never remember if it goes Mega and then Ultimate or Ultimate and then Mega. I don't remember. But Antilomon is like the next level up, so Antilomon is quite powerful. They still try to fight, and this is when he digivolves into Cherubimon, and he grabs. Well, what ends up happening is this is when Anjumon and Anjulamon show up, and Kari and TK are there, and Cherubimon had grabbed, had managed to grab a couple of them and was ready to kind of eat them. He also juggled them around just to yep, I'm this strong, I'm just gonna juggle your other Digimon and then I'm gonna try to eat them. And any damage that they do to him is basically just nullified because the virus just heals it instantly. So kind of think Deadpool, because at one point they do literally chop off his arms and everything, and they just kind of regrow a lot faster than what happens with Deadpool, but you get the idea. And what ends up happening is, Cherubimon keeps telling them, go back, and then they notice that they're all turned into little kids, like the ages that they were when the virus would have attacked Kokomon in the first place. And they point that out, and they're just Willis is go back doesn't mean go back to Colorado. It means go back to when the virus first attacked Kokomon. So we're getting that whole explanation. I was yeah, we kind of figured that out already. And this is when Anjumon and Anjumon digivolve to their mega form, so Antilomon would be the ultimate form. Digivolve to their mega forms and release the 2 golden Digi-Eggs, the Digi-Egg Miracles that goes to Davis, and the Digi-Egg of Destiny that goes to Willis, I think. And then Vmon digivolves into Magnamon, and then Terriermon Golden Armor digivolves, of course, into Rapidmon. And they are then able to defeat, they're sucked inside of Cherubimon, where they then see Wendigomon and tells them to destroy the virus, and then that's what they do. Doing so purifies Cherubimon and transforming him into its, his vaccine form, his normal form. He then is able to say goodbye to Willis and thank him and everything. And he then dies. And Willis is, so sad that he thinks that he's lost both Terriermon and Kokomon. And then Terriermon and Vmon appear, and they're perfectly fine. And Willis is, he's so happy because he still at least has Terriermon. And what ends up happening is they get, he's reunited with them, and they end up back in New York, I guess, and he's saying goodbye to Davis and Yoli and Cody and Kari and TK. In certain edits, Mimi's there, in certain ones she's not, but he gives Yoli and Kari kisses on the cheek, which makes Davis very angry. And then we cut to, because we have it, because Davis tells Willis, it's the thing that you have to learn about Digimon is they never really die. And this is one of the quotes that comes from Kari as well, because she's the one that's narrating the movie, of course, is, the thing about Digimon is they never really die. Their data just gets reconfigured. And, we cut to Willis on the phone with his mom again, and then he's by the beach, and then there's this Digi-Egg that washes up on shore. And it's hinted that Digi-Egg, well, then we kind of see, Wendigomon kind of, dancing a little bit, and he's just he's tone deaf. So it's implied that Willis does get Kokomon back, that does get Lopmon. As I said, the edit of the film that I'm familiar with is the English dub edit. implies certain things with that, but we don't get to see everything. And then in regards to like other just character notes about Willis, it's implied that Willis is able to communicate with Digidestin because a Japanese girlfriend taught him Japanese. He is especially friendly with girls and flirts with them, preferably Yoli. On the other hand, he is the exact opposite towards Davis because he's just like, go away. Well, Davis and considered Davis strange and rude. Davis found Willis arrogant, which struck a friction between the two boys. Yeah, it's he just when Davis had when Willis reveals that he doesn't have the heart to fight Kokomon because it's fighting his friend. Davis does sympathize with him because Davis kind of went through that very similarly when it came to having to fight against Agumon slash Greymon slash Metal Black Metal Greymon when Agumon was under the control of Ken with the Dark Spiral. And like we saw that like that Davis's hesitance to fight there, and then it's of course when he has to realize that sometimes you do have to fight them in order to save them. And that's one of the things that kind of helps them bond. They do become friends, of course, but they still kind of, mock each other a little bit. Right before, he does give Kari and Yoli kisses before running away, running off and everything. And then we really don't see anything else about Willis. Again, there was theories in regards to like Digimon Adventure Tri that Willis was going to show back up again. I would have been perfectly fine if Willis showed back up, but he doesn't in Digimon Adventure Tri. There was thoughts that maybe he was going to be one of the other ones that was in the cryo tubes or something like that. But he's not. We maybe we hear might get a reference to him, but he's not really mentioned. And then when we get to Digimon 2010 and the Digimon timeline, so 2020 Digimon Last Evolution, it is Willis is one of the Digidestin who has had their minds seized and captured and everything by Eosmon, and that he is in the Never world where he'll never grow up, and he has Terriermon and Lopmon there with him. After Agumon and Gabumon are able to defeat Menawa and Eosmon, Willis is freed and regains his consciousness, of course, in the real world, and we see him playing with Terriermon and Lopmon on a beach. I tried to find images of this, but I just couldn't. We also see, I think there's another Digidestin that we see there. I don't think it's Michael. Although I wouldn't be surprised if Izzy was at some point, he's just well, let's just make this giant network of Digidestined all over the world, which is kind of a good idea, but is also kind of not the best idea in regards to, because that's what Menawa does. She uses this list that Izzy has in order to find all the rest of these Digidestined. Not the best idea. I mean, good idea on her part, but not the best idea on Izzy's part to just have this giant Rolodex version of let's find every single Digidestin there is in the world. But admittedly, it wasn't, they were able to defeat Menawa. But we do see, I think we do see Willis in the Neverworld. If anything, he's either, we see him specifically in his own little world, or we see him with just, the group shot when we see a bunch of the other Digidestin there that Menawa has, captured. We don't really see anything else about Willis. He has Terriermon and Kokomon back, obviously. He'll probably have to go through the same thing again, where he has to lose them at some point, and then hopefully he'll get them back when, kind of he has his own children, or however that would work out to be. I really want Digimon to do something with that, with the, because 2027 is when it lines up to where the epilogue takes place for Digimon Adventure, and I would really love it if they did something with that, but I don't think that they're going to. But I would love it if they did, or if they did something along those lines, I would love it so much. Or if they just did something else that showed, okay, this is how they get their Digimon back, even if it's just a short that they did, I would love that. But this is how you get your Digimon back. So we'll see what happens with that. Willis may pop up again. I like Willis. I think that he's a fairly good character. He's kind of the stereotype of the character type of I'm going to take everything onto my shoulders because he doesn't want anybody else to get hurt because of him and Wendigomon and, Terriermon and everything of the mistake that he made. He already saw the damage that Diaboromon did in regards to, turning in, what he turned into and almost blew up, almost used 2 nuclear missiles. Yeah. So I kind of don't blame Willis for the way that he acts with that, but it's also the same concept of, you can't take everything onto your own shoulders and not accept help from people that can help you. I went over something very similar to this when I talked about the My Hero video a couple of weeks ago, where I talked about like Class 1A trying to get it through Deku's thick head. At the moment I'm recording this, I do not know the resolution to what happens with Deku with that case, so we'll find out what happens when that happens. But Willis is very much, he at least got Kokomon and Terriermon back. I think in like one edit or something like that, or one version, it was like he didn't get Kokomon back. And that implied that because a Digimon died in the real world, that they can't come back. But I don't know exactly if that's 100% the way that works or not. Because it's implied to be what happens with Mako and Mekumon, but there's a different reason for that. Which I will go over when I do Mako's video, which she gets her own freaking video. Because, yeah, the next one after Willis, after this one, is going to be the miscellaneous Digidestined that they interact with during the Digimon World Tour. And then the next one after that would be the Dark Spore Children that Oikawa has. And then I will have a video about Oikawa, and I will have a video about Mako and Mekumon, and then of course one about Diego and Himakawa, and then I think that actually finishes out the Digidestined and Menawa, and of course Menawa. I will go over Menawa in her own video. But I've got like all those Digimon friend videos, and then I still have like I think like 1 or 2 other like Digimon villain enemies videos, whatever that I need to do. So that's what I have for Willis. I would love it if he showed back up again. We'll see if he ever does. But that's what I have for Willis. So I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And if I do find a link and I put the chocolate in there, please look into the chocolate, because it goes to very good causes in regards to making sure that the farmers and the makers of the chocolate get a fair amount in how much they make from each of the bars. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye! One thing you have to learn about Digimon: they never really die.